Hello and welcome to the Let's Talk Thyroid podcast. This is episode 68. I'm Annabel Bateman and today we're going to talk all about thyroid and alcohol. Big topic, a bit like sleep. There's a lot more to it. So again, this is a bit like an introduction to the topic. I am again, just like the sleep episode last time, going to put lots of links and references in the show notes. So if you want to go digging into a particular element, then go to the show notes, which you'll find at annabelbateman.com/podcast, and you can go digging and doing a bit more reading and research. Now, the reality is, we all have a different relationship with alcohol, irrespective of thyroid health. And so there's going to be lots of different views on on this whole topic. So I think if you've been listening for a little while, you know that one of the purposes of this podcast is to bring a positive and practical approach to all thyroid issues. And again, I'm going to try to approach this one positively and practically so that you can make your own decisions as to what is best for your thyroid health and your thyroid-friendly lifestyle. Now, just after the little jingle, I am going to tell you a short story and make an announcement before we get into the show properly. But before I even get to the little jingle, I thought I'd start with telling you a second story. I'm not a big storyteller, as you probably know, but I do have two stories for this. So the first story relates to alcohol, and then the second one's after the jingle, and we'll get to that. So when I was in year 9, I did an experiment on the effect of alcohol on the human body. And it was a whole lot of fun at the time. It has certainly been the cause of lots of interesting conversations over the years with family and friends. So I can't remember the exact parameters, but year 9, I was probably about 13 or 14. And we needed to concoct an experiment, do the experiment, report on the experiment. And so I decided to do this experiment on how alcohol affects the human body. Now, I sent off to the Drug and Alcohol Foundation, or whatever it was called at the time, got lots of, information booklets in the mail, as you did back then, probably did some research in, places like the World Book Encyclopedia, which I don't even know if they still exist, and learnt, lots just in general about thyroid, not about thyroid, but about alcohol and the human body. Certainly, I don't remember anything specifically about thyroid. And so I came up with this experiment where Mum and Dad and 6 of their friends laid down their lives in the pursuit of science and drank alcohol for a night. And then I recorded them doing simple jigsaw puzzles and walking in a straight line, just to see the impact that alcohol had on them. So amongst the 8 adults, there were 2 drinking wine, 2 spirits, 2 sparkling, 2 beer, and one of each pair ate dinner, and the other part of the pair didn't. And I got to really see the impact that alcohol had on the human body, and particularly if you don't eat while you are drinking. So I think I learned at a fairly young age that alcohol has an impact on the human body. I've actually never really been a big drinker. I don't know if that had anything to do with that experiment, but I think more of it had to do with, as I came into my, late teens, early 20s, it overlapped with what I know now, my thyroid really kind of declining. And so I would always rather eat my calories than drink them. And I was always on a diet, counting calories, points, tracking, all sorts of things like that, and really battling with my weight, which I now know, would have been to do with my hypothyroidism, but I didn't know that at the time, and I just thought I would rather eat than drink. And so alcohol has really never been, something that I've never been a big drinker, let's just say that. But I do like to drink from time to time. It's just never, I suppose even after I've sorted my thyroid health out, I would still rather, I'd still probably rather eat than drink. And I have found increasingly over time that I have developed a bit of an intolerance for alcohol, which again is not an uncommon thing for people with thyroid conditions. So, anyway, I'll share a few more of my little stories as we go along. I just wanted to share that little story with you before we get into the introduction to the show. So as I just said, let me just share another little story unrelated to alcohol and make an announcement before we get into the guts of talking all about thyroid and alcohol. Now, when our third baby was being born, I was pregnant with our third baby, we couldn't decide on a name for him, even though we found out that he was a boy, and I was always a bit, I don't know, I couldn't really understand when people couldn't come up with a name for their baby and they had to wait till the baby was born to see what it looked like. And if the name matched, that just didn't make sense to me. I thought, surely, of all the names and all the months I had to decide, I could have come up with a name. Now, I'd already used up a number of boys' names with our older two, Alexander and Benjamin. But we still couldn't decide on a name. We went into the operating theatre. I had a planned cesarean. Still couldn't come up with a name, and I was really adamant that I didn't want to announce the birth of this child without a name. So we had a short list, and we named our third child Jonathan. Now, as the next couple of days went on, I was having trouble calling him Jonathan. The nurses had come in and they're like, "How's baby Jonathan?" And it just didn't feel right. I was having trouble saying it. When Lee went to church the Sunday after he was born, I was still in hospital, and somebody asked him, "Oh, congratulations, what have you named your son?" And he couldn't remember. That was kind of a sign that Jonathan wasn't the right name. And so we named him Charles, not Charlie, and Charlie is just the perfect name for Charlie. Jonathan wasn't the right name for him. Charlie is the right name for him. And so I had to sort of eat a bit of humble pie because, I had to go back on all of what I'd said about people who, thought they needed to see the child before, and that a name wouldn't really matter, that a child would grow into a name. So I tend to do that sometimes, make some bold statements and have to go back and eat my words. But I'm really glad we did, because Charlie is the perfect name for Charlie. Now, I tell you that because I'm about to make another name change, not to one of my children, although it feels a bit like a child. So today I'm announcing that Kiss and Make Up With Your Thyroid will no longer be called Kiss and Make Up With Your Thyroid. Not because I don't like the name. I actually love the name. I love the name Kiss and Make Up With Your Thyroid. To me, it symbolises a lot of what I've written about and how it's important to make peace with your health. Particularly when you're dealing with a long-term health condition, you need to really make peace with it. And, that mindset piece is so fundamental to good health management. And so, and I like the KISS, I've made sort of represent, keep it super simple. And I really like that too. I think that's very helpful when it comes to thyroid conditions, that we need to keep it super simple because it can get a bit overwhelming. But what I've found is that the core person I wrote the book for is someone who is fairly new to thyroid, being fairly newly diagnosed with their thyroid condition. Because it's all the basics of all of the diet and lifestyle things that you can do alongside medication in the long term. And I really want people who are fairly newly diagnosed to get off on the right start and not have to spend decades struggling before they can, adopt that thyroid-friendly lifestyle. And I don't think that person, when they see the title Kiss and Make Up With Your Thyroid, sees that it's a book for them. I don't think they really know what that means. They just want help. They just want some positive and practical help for their thyroid. They want to be guided along a path. And so I am renaming the book Let's Talk Thyroid, because I think that is just simple. It obviously fits in with the brand of the podcast. And so it'll be Let's Talk Thyroid with a subtitle of Positive and Practical Thyroid Help, which I think really is much clearer as to what the book is. And if you are scrolling on Amazon looking for a thyroid book to help you on your thyroid journey, I think that's going to make a whole lot more sense. The content of the book is exactly the same, bar a chapter title change and, a couple of sentences where I was describing the name of the book, why I named it that. But otherwise the content is completely unchanged. So if you are ordering what will be now called Let's Talk Thyroid on Amazon, you will get the new cover. If you are ordering it through me, which I still ask that you do if you are in Australia, partly because I've still got, I'm not sure exactly, just under 200 copies, I think, left in the garage, you will get a very limited edition cover of Kiss and Make Up with Your Thyroid. So it will be completely limited edition. You'll have the very special copy because, really what I want is this book to sell thousands and thousands of copies all around the world. So if you've got one of the original Kiss and Make Up with Your Thyroid books, you are going to be very special. So please do order that from me. If you are in Australia or New Zealand, it's definitely cheaper for you to do that. I've still got the free shipping, which I will continue. And I think I'm going to do a bit of a deal with my thyroid box because the book is in the box and I really want those boxes in the hands of people who really need it. So I think I'll do a bit of a deal with that. So stay tuned. So I hope you really understand the change of the name. The content is exactly the same. And I think it's just going to make it a whole lot easier for people who don't, who are looking for a thyroid book to help them on their journey. Right. Now let's get into talking all about thyroid and alcohol. This is a big topic. Alcohol can raise a whole lot of different thoughts, feelings, emotions, experiences for people. So as I said in the intro, use this as a springboard to do some of your own digging into issues if you find that when you drink that you aren't feeling good. And maybe looking at alcohol might be something that is worth doing for you. If you feel completely fine with it, well, and just use this as some information to understand how alcohol can affect the thyroid. So I've really broken this into how it affects thyroid function, the gland itself, how it affects the other systems in the body that support thyroid health itself, and then also the autoimmune aspect. Because remembering with autoimmune thyroid conditions, it's an issue with the immune system and the autoimmunity that then it impacts the thyroid rather than the core reason being a problem with the thyroid. So we're going to talk about all of that. We're going to cover some really practical things too as to, if you do want to reduce alcohol or remove alcohol, how do you do that? How do you deal with the peer pressure and social engagements? And what are some really great what are some really great tasting alternatives? Non-alcoholic alternatives. So I'm going to leave you with those really practical solutions at the end. All right. So the impact on the thyroid gland. Actually, alcohol does have a direct impact on the thyroid gland and on thyroid cells. It has a toxic effect. It can destroy thyroid cells and it can actually shrink the size of the thyroid gland itself, which means less thyroid hormone cells exist to produce, more hormones. So, the smaller the size of the thyroid, the less the number of thyroid hormones can be produced. So just be aware that can happen. And it can actually reduce, and I'm not sure entirely if it's because of this or sits alongside this, but it can actually reduce the production of T4 and T3, which obviously we need T4 and T4 to be converted into T3, which I'll come to. And it can also blunten. So you think about alcohol sort of is a depressant. It's a dampener. So it dampens the TSH response. So it's dampening that response between the pituitary telling the thyroid how much thyroid to produce. And so that's going to have a flow-on effect to how much thyroid hormone is actually produced. So then we look at, how does it impact on other core parts of the body that are involved in thyroid function? So first of all, we're going to look at the gut. When we drink alcohol, it goes into our digestive system. So what impact does it have there? Well, alcohol can contribute to leaky gut. And leaky gut is where, the linings of the digestive system, the gut, have little kind of junctures where, food and, things that are going through the digestive system don't stay there, but they can leak out into the bloodstream, and that causes a whole lot of unpleasant digestive issues and toxicity in our cells. So we don't want leaky gut. leaky gut sits behind pretty much all autoimmune diseases, so that ties into the autoimmune aspect as well. So that, alcohol can contribute to that, as can gluten, and gluten is found in beer. So just be aware that if you're a beer drinker, that it contains gluten, and gluten contributes to leaky gut. Gluten is a very, very common food intolerance for people with thyroid conditions, particularly autoimmune. So we should, if you haven't removed gluten or given that a go yet, then that would be worth doing. But in terms of the alcohol, just know that it is in beer. And the sugar that's in a lot of alcoholic drinks is also not good for the gut or the immune system, or also hormone regulation, blood sugar regulation. So if you're drinking lots of sugary alcoholic drinks, then that can have an impact too. And I know even a number of years ago when I was, if I'd have a glass of wine, which, is high sugar, but it's not like high sugar, like a cocktail or a mixer drink or, a vodka cruiser or something like that. But I just felt like alcohol wasn't agreeing with me, and I felt it in my gut first. So then I sort of switched over to gin, and I'll come to that too. But just know that alcohol has an impact on the gut, and the gut and the liver, which we're about to come to, are two very key places that the body converts T4 into T3. Now remember that T3 is the active thyroid hormone. That's what we need to get into all the cells in our body, in all the different organs and parts of our body, to give us energy and to help our body function. And so if we're not converting T4 to T3 well, then that's going to have a flow-on effect for our body and our hypothyroidism. So if the gut isn't in a good place, if you don't have good microbiome, if you've got leaky gut, if your gut's got to deal with all these other things, and it's not going to be able to convert the T4 into T3 well. The other key organ in dealing with alcohol, and that is very critical to thyroid function, is the liver. So remembering the liver and the gut, the liver actually is, I'm pretty sure it's the liver does more of the converting of the T4 into T3. So, and we know that liver is, key in dealing with alcohol. So if it's busy dealing with alcohol, then how is it going to, have as much capacity for that conversion of T4 into T3? Well, it's not. So we do have to remember that. So drinking alcohol, particularly, I guess, obviously that comes into how often, how much, but if the liver is constantly dealing with processing alcohol, then it's going to have more of an issue in converting thyroid hormone. Also, one of the things I came across in terms of liver is for those of you with Graves' disease and on prescribed medication for Graves' disease, it's really important to have your liver functioning well, because the liver is also trying to process those prescription medication. So just be aware of that as well. The other thing that the liver does is it has to unburden the body of excess estrogen. Now, estrogen, you'll remember, is a hormone. We've talked about it a bit with Sophie Shepherd a couple of episodes ago, so go back to that hormone episode just to go over the basics of estrogen. But there are a lot of estrogenic things that we ingest in our bodies, sometimes even things like when plastic is leached into our water from a plastic water bottle, that's sort of estrogenic. But alcohol is also estrogenic, and I actually didn't know that. So estrogen can actually suppress or block thyroid function, and the liver's job is to detoxify that excess estrogen. So if it's that just giving the liver the best chance to do its job in the best way that it can. And if we're adding all these extra burdens, other toxic, maybe other chemicals to process, hormones to deal with, alcohol, then it's not going to do its other jobs well. And if you are like me, and you have had your gallbladder removed, which is a fairly common Hashimoto's thing, as I understand it, then your liver picks up the slack of what the gallbladder would do. The liver works extra hard. So I know for me, I'm always trying to support my liver. I'm usually on some kind of supplement to support my liver and help with that detoxification process. So that might be something to talk about with your naturopath or integrative GP, is to, does your liver need a bit of extra support? What supplements or what things can you do to support your liver? So, talk to your doctor or health practitioner about that. Also, alcohol impacts on your adrenal health. So when we see that rise in the estrogen, the body can become stressed. Stress leads to increased cortisol. Increased cortisol can impact on your adrenals. I know that's very, very simplified, but remember that stress, there's good stress and there's bad stress and there's chronic bad stress. So, go back to previous episodes, we've talked about lots of, stress and impact of that. But bear in mind that alcohol can cause a stress to your body. And again, if we're dealing with it on a really regular basis, then that can be difficult for the body to handle. Stress, both physical, emotional, holistic stress has a really, really big impact on thyroid health. The thyroid is a very, very sensitive gland. And so we want to be doing what we can to reduce that stress. So, I know that people use alcohol often to reduce stress. So whether it actually does that or not, I don't know. That's a personal choice, but just be aware that alcohol can actually cause stress on the body. It can also deplete vitamins and minerals required for thyroid function, so things like magnesium, zinc, vitamin Bs, selenium, even vitamin C can be impaired. And then when it affects your gut, it can impact on the absorption of those nutrients and minerals. So even if you're eating really well and taking your supplements, if you're not digesting that food well, breaking it down, absorbing it, or if you're having things in your system like alcohol that might be blocking that absorption or depleting, sort of stripping out what you're putting in, then you're sort of defeating the purpose. You're sort of going around a bit in circles where you're trying really hard on one level and then sort of taking away from all the benefit of what you're trying to do. I promise you we're coming to some good news about alcohol too in a minute, if there is some. But just also be aware that alcohol can impact on your weight. Obviously, calories can be part of that. Alcohol is a depressant. It slows things down. When you've got hypothyroidism, we don't need things slowing down any more than it already is. So, and things like weight gain, inability to lose weight, are symptoms of an underactive thyroid anyway. So, I guess pick your battles and see what, maybe if your thyroid health and your autoimmune health is really great, then you're going to have a bit more capacity to enjoy that drink without the flow-on effect. If you're in a really healing stage at the moment where your gut health is a bit of a mess and your liver needs a whole lot of extra support, you're struggling to lose weight, then maybe removing alcohol or significantly limiting it for a period of time just to let your body heal might mean in the longer term, then you've got a bit more flexibility. The other connection in with thyroid symptoms is mood. It's very common with thyroid, both hyper and hypothyroid, that we have different mood issues like depression, anxiety, just irritability, some of those, and alcohol can impact on those things too. So again, it's a bit like, well, if that's a real issue for you, then you might want to look at alcohol. Is it a contributing factor in those struggles? Maybe give it a go, have a time without it, see if you feel any different. Just wait. You've got to weigh those things up. One of the biggest issues that I personally have with drinking alcohol is that it impacts my sleep. I just have trouble falling asleep if I've had any really more than one drink. Sometimes even one is enough to mean that I just lie there awake and I'm not sleeping. Alcohol can lead to that cortisol spike we spoke about last episode with sleep, in that causing you to wake up in the night. and then often not being able to get back to sleep. So, just be aware that alcohol can have that impact on sleep. And for me, I don't know, I have enough trouble sleeping with a whole lot of other things, although I'm a lot better than I used to be. But alcohol for me, I'd probably rather sleep than drink. So while it has a significant impact on my sleep, then, I choose to not have too much to drink. Maybe it doesn't impact your sleep at all. I don't know, but it certainly can do. There was a study I read about with hypothyroid rats, and it showed about 16% had an impact of sleep. So I suppose 16% is not that high really, but if you're one of those 16%, and obviously that's on rats, not humans, but just know that it can have an impact on your sleep. Now let's have a quick chat about the autoimmune elements, which apply really whether you've got Graves or Hashimoto's, because we're dealing with the autoimmunity. And so it sort of fits in with what we've already talked about in a lot of ways, because, your gut and your liver are really important for your autoimmune function, autoimmune health. So important to have healthy gut, healthy liver. So that sort of goes back into not only what the body does with the thyroid hormones and thyroid function, but also the immune system. And, a lot of our immune system lives in the gut. So again, if you don't have a healthy gut, you don't have a healthy immune system. That alcohol, sugar, gluten, if you're having, say, beer, like I said before, can cause inflammation, and inflammation's not good for autoimmunity. So there's all of those things that are all interconnected anyway. It's good to know that alcohol can be an environmental trigger of an autoimmune disease. But also, interestingly, there's been some research that shows that moderate alcohol consumption can be associated with a reduced risk of autoimmune disease, both Hashimoto's and Graves. And I'll put links to the studies in the show notes. So, I think that's really interesting. So, I don't know, are you one of those ones that might trigger an autoimmune response? Or are you in the category, or maybe if you're listening to this, you're not in this category. Maybe the people that aren't listening to this are in the category of, reduced risk of autoimmune thyroid disease. So, this is where thyroid disease and autoimmune thyroid impacts so many people. There's going to be a lot of individual variants. So, but for those of us where it maybe is a trigger, you might feel like a flare, what we often call a hypothyroid flare. After drinking, it might take you longer than normal to recover from drinking alcohol, like we're just feeling really tired and fatigued, and you don't have that sort of energy and it takes a long time to recover from drinking. So, just being aware of those interactions, I suppose, and remembering the gut and the liver and the impact that they have on the immune system, and just dealing with toxicity. So that's all how alcohol can impact the thyroid and the autoimmune elements. I want to deal with a couple of benefits first, because I know, alcohol is one of those things that you can kind of find a study to show whatever you want to show. Having a drink a day keeps you happy, keeps you healthy. Sometimes it doesn't. I think there's so many different studies. I'm no expert in scientific studies at all, but I think we probably all read enough about alcohol or heard enough headlines over the years to know that there's benefits and negatives, and we've just got to work it all out for ourselves individually. But I did find it interesting that it could be associated with that reduced risk of autoimmune thyroid disease, and for both Hashimoto's and Graves. Alcohol can also be associated with a reduced risk of thyroid cancer. A small amount of alcohol may reduce the development of Graves' disease. So, I know that sort of fits in with the autoimmune thyroid, but I think that was a separate, something separate I came across as well. Alcohol can be protective against the development of goiters, that sort of swelling in your thyroid. And it can be used actually in the treatment of thyroid nodules and some thyroid cancers. because of the toxic effect on thyroid cells. So I think that's kind of interesting, isn't it? So if you've got thyroid nodules or some thyroid cancers, they'll use alcohol injected, not drunk. So I don't think you can drink your way out of this, but they inject alcohol because of its toxic effect on thyroid cells. So, it's helping to eliminate those unhealthy cells. So I don't think we want to be doing that to healthy thyroid cells, but interestingly, that alcohol can be used to treat some of those unhealthy thyroid cells. So that's the good news about alcohol. Now, if you are wanting to not drink or reduce your alcohol intake, how do you actually deal with the social situations? Because that's often the hardest part, isn't it? How do you deal with that pressure of, come on, have a drink, or we're celebrating, or, why aren't you having a drink? Some family and friends are more, can be more vocal about it. Sometimes people projecting their own relationship with alcohol onto you by wanting you to drink to make them feel better. There's a whole lot of different reasons why this part is hard. But anyway, I'm just going to give you a few little tips. And I'm sure as we discuss this on social media over the next week or so, then I would love to hear your experiences and how you found dealing with making some changes to your alcohol consumption and how that has impacted on perhaps relationships or how you've dealt with that. I've got a friend who I know did a whole year, her and her husband did a whole year without alcohol, and that was really fascinating. She said it wasn't actually hard, but it was really fascinating seeing how other people dealt with that. So I think one of the things is, it's the same as if you're going to make a change to, say, go gluten-free, is you've got to make the decision. And you want to make that decision ahead of time, not in the middle of a big party. You're not going to decide in the middle of a party, well, I'm not going to drink. You want to make a decision ahead of time and for your own personal reasons. Like, you might have think back and think to your gut and your liver and your immune system and your mood and your weight and some of those things we talked about above, and decide, well, for a period of time, perhaps you want to not drink at all, or you want to reduce the amount you drink. But that's your decision. And if you know why you're making it, then that actually helps you to make it and stick with it. So, have a think about whether that's something you want to do, need to do, make a decision about it. And again, use some of those principles that we've talked about in terms of making those dietary changes to alcohol. So telling people helps, removing it from your household if that's a temptation. Like if it's too hard to have alcohol in the house, then take it out or box it up and, make it hard to access. Just like you might remove the sugary biscuits if you're trying to remove sugar and gluten, then, do what is going to make it easy for you to do. Practice saying no. I think being clear about why you're doing it helps with setting boundaries, and it actually also helps with talking to other people about it. But just practice saying no, or practice saying, thank you for, that looks amazing, thank you, I'd love to, but not this time, or whatever there's a whole episode I did on boundaries. So I'll link that in the show notes, but go back. It's I think it's about episode 17, somewhere like that, but all about setting boundaries and saying no. Because I think those of us with that thyroid personality, and that's a whole other episode that we've done in the past as well, often tend to want to please people. We often put ourselves and our own needs last or towards the bottom of the list. And that can play out in, I'll keep you happy by having a drink, even though I don't really want to, because I would rather put your comfort ahead of mine. So just be aware of that. Tendency can come with that thyroid personality. And so if that's an issue, then practice saying no, work out what it is you're going to say. If you need to say anything at all, you don't have to, but if you do need to explain yourself, then know what you're going to say and why you're making that decision. You might want to tie it in with something like Dry July. That's why I thought I'd talk about alcohol. At the moment, there is a whole thing called Dry July. There's also, is it Feb Fast and October? So they're kind of months in the year where often people will give themselves a break from alcohol. So July is one of them. You might want to tie it in with that and say, well, for a month, I'm not going to have any alcohol. I'm going to see how I feel. That's where it's helpful to track things in your journal. You know, how did you feel before? How do you feel afterwards? You know, and maybe journal some of those feelings and those, observations that you've noticed. Are you sleeping better? Is your skin clearer? Is your digestive system better? Are you, all those sorts of things. So tying it in with something and doing it with other people can be helpful. But if you are going to have a drink, what are the best options? So again, this might depend on your current gut health and liver health as to, what the best alcoholic options are. But definitely you want to be looking for gluten-free beer if you're a beer drinker. I've never been a beer drinker, but, I know that there are more gluten-free beers available than used to be. You also want to look for alcohol that has low or no sugar. Definitely avoiding your sweet cocktails and mixes because of the impact that sugar has. Again, trying to avoid artificial sugars too, because again, that's putting more toxins into your body. So then your liver is dealing with the toxicity, the chemicals from the artificial sugar as well as dealing with the alcohol. It can be hard to find pre-mixed drinks that are low or no sugar. I know I've spent a lot of time trying to find some. They do exist. They're not easy to find. I do have one in the fridge at the moment, actually. So I'll try to remember to take a photo and share it in social media later on in the week. So be aware that things like wine can, whilst it's not super high in sugar, it has sugar. So it can also have that impact on your blood sugar. Generally, the best options to drink alcohol with a thyroid condition are clean, clear spirits. So things like your gin, vodka, and tequila tend to be the ones that people have the least issues with. Although what I've realised is that some of the gins that I like just on ice, like a bit of an after dinner drink, are sweeter. So things like your Shiraz gins, and there's a really great one that I love called Gin Toddy. And it is a bit sweet, so it does have that sugar element to it, so which is different to just a plain, more savoury gin. So just be aware of that as well. How can we actually mitigate the impacts? Like, is there anything that we can do to help our body process the alcohol a little bit better so that the fallout's not so great? Well, I think we'd all know that if we drink lots of water while we're drinking alcohol, that helps. Even making sure that water has something like a slice of lemon or lime or a drop of lemon or essential oil. Lemon contains antioxidants, which helps with the free radicals in our body. It's a cleanser. So that is going to help. Having essential oils, if you've got food grade essential oils, then something like I've found is a drop of grapefruit with a drop of the digestive blend or a detox blend, either in a capsule or in a shot of water before bed. If you've had a drink or two, can help. Just the helping that digestive process and the liver detoxing process. So it's not going to eliminate it, so it doesn't actually mitigate the alcohol, but it just helps the body to process it that little bit more. I came across an article from Forefront Health that I'll link in the show notes that said that Dr. Raymond Peat recommends following alcohol with fructose. Apparently there was a study that showed that fructose helps the liver to metabolize alcohol. So if you have an alcoholic drink, either mix it with juice or have juice or fruit after the alcoholic drink. Now, I haven't tried that. I thought that was really interesting, so you can go digging into that if that sounds appealing to you. I guess then you've got the sugar impact, so none of it's ideal. It's just about, making the best of the situation, I suppose. So now let's have a chat about some alternatives. Actually, this morning I Well, I actually recorded this episode yesterday. I've had a bit of a cold and I think it just sounded so nasally. I'm just re-recording it now. I think I'm still a little bit nasally, but not as much as yesterday. But this morning, or actually late last night, I was looking at news and there was a big headline, something to do with Dry July and how there's a massive uptake in low and no alcohol, non-alcoholic drinks. That it's becoming a really massive industry. So I think a bit like the gluten-free thing, like 10, 20 years ago, it was much, much harder to be gluten-free. There weren't as many alternatives. It's just, I think now, for a whole wide range of reasons, a lot of people are backing off on the alcohol. And so, but still wanting to have something special. And so when you are out at a party or out to dinner or you've got friends over, you don't always want to just drink tap water. Well, you shouldn't drink tap water anyway, unless it's filtered. But people don't want to just drink water. You want to feel like you're part of the celebration, you're having something a bit special because it's a special occasion. So we want to find things that, drinks that can make us feel a bit special. So an obvious step up from water would be sparkling water, so mineral water or carbonated water. I like I've got a soda stream machine, where you can basically carbonate the water. Just the sparkles in the water makes it feel a bit more special. Pour it in, serve it in, drink it out of a wine glass. That can make it feel more special with some nice ice and maybe a slice of lemon or lime or cucumber or a couple of raspberries, make it look pretty. Especially in summer, that's nice and refreshing. Drinks like kombucha and water kefir, they're fermented drinks. They can be really great. You want to make sure you're not drinking too much in a day because it can disrupt your gut, microbiome, even though it's good, there's good bacteria in there. You don't want to disrupt it too much, but kombucha and water kefir, fabulous. I have been known to add a shot of gin to my water kefir or to my kombucha at different points in time. But on their own, they're a really nice alternative. If you're out at a bar and where it's maybe a little bit trickier, just having a lime and soda, it can look like you're drinking a vodka lime and soda. And one of the ladies in my Instagram stories, I was asking a couple of days ago, did anyone have any questions about thyroid and alcohol? And that was sort of that's what she does when she's out, has a lime and soda. It looks like a vodka lime and soda. And so then it's sort of easier to fit in with everybody else because it sort of looks like you're not just sort of being the odd person out. So that is a great option. And just there's something, maybe it's the colour of just having a little slice of lime and lemon in there, makes it feel that little bit more special. And you've got the added benefits of the citrus oils, like I said before. You can have a great look online for some nice mocktail recipes. Ginny Marsh shared a great one the other day on her Instagram, so go check that out. It was a watermelon slushy or watermelon something. So go looking for that if you're wanting a nice summery celebratory mocktail. Yes, it's going to be a bit higher in sugar or sweetener than sparkling water, but for that special occasion, then maybe that's what you look at, having a fun alternative. Coconut water, I would also put in a great, that's another great alternative. A really nice natural electrolyte replacer, so awesome in the hot, sweaty summer months. So they're all good, that's good alternatives too. And I think what I'd love to do is, in the social media posts is, when we get to this, is share your favourite brand. Because this is a global podcast, I can share my brands that are available here in Australia, but if you're listening in America or the UK or South Africa or New Zealand, then they're not going to be the same. So, it would be great to share things that you've found with other people who may live closer to you. But definitely there's a big rise in the zero alcohol wines, and some of the big, good quality wineries are doing them now. And I learnt when I went looking for some no alcohol wine recently that they make it in the same process. So it's exactly the same as the alcoholic version. They've just then essentially cooked the alcohol out of it. So the base, it's not just fruit juice. It has been fermented in the ways that it was, whilst it was alcoholic, and they've just removed the alcohol. So I think we're going to find over the next few years that the quality of the non-alcoholic versions of alcoholic drinks just get better and better tasting. And I think that's just going to give us so many more options than we've had in the past. So there you have it, thyroid and alcohol, bit of an introduction. I'm looking forward to hearing your experiences on social media over the next week or so. So please, please do share. I do love it when you engage with what I'm putting out there. It helps me to know that there are people listening and engaging and learning, and and I think we definitely do all learn from each other's experiences too. So, but feel free to share. There's nothing too silly to share. I really appreciate that, and I know that I'm a firm believer that there'll always be someone else that will benefit from what you share, and what you share will be slightly different to my experiences. So the more of us that talk about thyroid, that's one of the reasons that I named this whole podcast Let's Talk Thyroid, is that we need to be talking about these things because it actually helps spread awareness and information and help to each other all around the world. So let's keep talking thyroid. Remember that the book is now called Let's Talk Thyroid. Podcast is Let's Talk Thyroid. Let's just say let's talk thyroid and have a fabulous fortnight. Bye. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Let's Talk Thyroid. I would love it if you enjoyed it, if you would hit subscribe and the bell. That would be really helpful. Even more helpful actually would be to share it with someone else who you know has thyroid issues or you think would benefit from listening. That really is part of my mission, I suppose, is to spread the message of positive and practical approach to managing your thyroid health so that people really kind of have more energy to get on with living their life and not just kind of trudging through each day. So spreading that word really genuinely helps other people feel better, live better, be better. The best way that you can connect with me is through my website, which is annabelbateman.com. From there, really, you'll be able to connect in all the other ways. I would love it if you would join my Facebook community group. There's lots of great support there. It's all free. That's just being with like-minded people. But from the website, you can also book a strategy session with me. So if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed, not too sure where to start, then book a strategy session. There's also freebies to download and links to look at my online courses or purchase some essential oils or my cookbook. So that's really the hub, would be annabelbateman.com. But look forward to connecting with you and just being in this thyroid health journey together. Have a great day. Bye.
The information presented and discussed in this podcast is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease and should not be used as a substitute for proper advice from a qualified professional.